Just to give you a little bit about me, I started my career in 1989 as a dispatcher, if you can go to the next slide, in the Montgomery County Emergency Communications Center. And I worked there for about 6 years and ended up leaving there. By the time I left, I was a supervisor. As a police officer, I became a hostage negotiator, and I think my interest in becoming a negotiator started when I worked in the communications center, because I was always talking on the phone with people who were in crisis. And so when the job came up later in my career to be a hostage negotiator, I thought maybe I'd be good at it. I became a police officer in 1995. I joined our crisis negotiation team in 2006. By the end of my career, I was a team leader on one of our teams. In Montgomery County, we had 3 hostage negotiation teams, about 10 negotiators on each team, so about 30 negotiators in Montgomery County. A lot of times people ask me, like, how often does that happen? Not that often, but I would say once a month we would be called out for some sort of crisis. So it could be a suicidal subject that was barricaded in their house, or like the Discovery Channel incident, if you remember that, when the guy took 3 hostages in the lobby of the Discovery building in Silver Spring. I was actually one of the negotiators that talked to him. In 2009, I was promoted to sergeant. I spent most of my career in patrol. The last about 11 or 12 years of my career, I worked on a specialized unit called the 4th District Community Action Team. What does that mean? It was a team designed based on a concept of community policing. So our goal was to address all sorts of quality of life crimes, nuisance crimes, things that a patrol officer doesn't have time to respond to. So we didn't necessarily run calls for service, although we could do that. But most of the things that we did were to handle minor nuisance offenses that would reduce the quality of life in your community. Our objective was to find a sustainable outcome to those offenses. So, for example, we had a homicide which occurred on Hewitt Avenue. And after that, there was a lot of disorderly behavior in that area, in that neighborhood. And one night when we responded to one of the events there, a resident came up to me and she said, it's the people that live in this unit that are doing all the trouble. So we did a little digging. We found out that the people that lived in that unit were HOC housing. So we just contacted HOC and we pulled their voucher. So that got them out of the community. So rather than making a ton of arrests, which probably wouldn't have resolved the issue, we just removed the problem from the community. That was one of the things that we did. And I've brought that same kind of community policing here to Leisure World. So that's really my focus, is to work with the community. I retired in 2022 in August, and I went to Georgetown University. I was Police Services Bureau Commander for the Georgetown University Police. I worked there for about 3 months, and then this job came up, and I quickly jumped at the opportunity to be in a higher leadership role here at Leisure World, and also the commute to Georgetown was terrible. So I didn't mind leaving. They've tried to get me to come back. I won't do it, but yeah. So I like it here, and so I am the Director of Security and Transportation here. I also have a bachelor's and master's degree from Johns Hopkins University. My degree says management, but the focus was public safety leadership. I'm also a nationally recognized speaker on suicide by cop, because that happened to me in 2012. And as you can imagine, it was life-changing. And so what I do is I go around the country. I've even gone to Canada and speak about the incident and others, and help officers identify how to identify someone who's committed to doing something like that, and also how to get help for yourself in the aftermath of a critical incident like that. At this point, I've done that presentation over 300 times. And the only agency that I still do it for is in Winchester, Virginia. They're just super nice to me, and I like going down there, so I just keep doing it for them. But I told everybody else when I retired that I was kind of done talking about it. And this will probably be the last year that I do it for them. I'm also an expert consultant in crisis intervention, crisis negotiation, and use of force. Montgomery County Attorney's Office reached out to me to be a consultant on a case that they were defending, and so I do that for them as well. You can go to the next slide. But the main thing that I wanted to establish was professionalism, and in doing that, the first thing that you need to have is a mission and a vision. And so I wrote these two statements, and they're issued to my officers when they are hired, so that they understand exactly what our mission is and what my vision is for working with the community. And I know it's small, so I'm going to read it to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
and for Jane. I'll do anything for Jane. So it is the mission of Leisure World Security and Transportation to provide a safe and secure environment to our community, to protect life and property, to reduce crime and the fear of crime, and to provide service with integrity, compassion, and a respect for the rule of law. That's our mission, okay? And then our vision is we recognize our responsibility to better the lives of those in our community, and will provide quality support, safety, security, and resources to all persons in need. Through collaboration with the Leisure World community, we will create meaningful relationships that sustain a safe environment for all. So that's my vision. Everything that we do, we try to align with these values and bring more professionalism from our department to you guys, because you deserve it. So these are some of the short-term goals. When I first got here, I took a look at the vehicles that they were using, and it was pretty appalling, to be honest with you. There were 2 cars that were over 10 years old. They had not had any kind of preventative maintenance or routine maintenance. I don't know in how long, but 2 of the cars, I took them to Graves because there wasn't even a mechanic here to fix them. And I took them to Graves up in Olney, and each of those cars was about $4,500 in repairs just to get it to where it was safe to drive. So they were driving around in that, and they were probably driving some of you around in that, and that's not safe, and we can't have that. So the number one thing was to get the vehicles up to a safety standard, and also to change the markings. One of the biggest complaints I heard when I first got here was, we never see you guys, we never see security. And that's another thing. When you look at the car, it said like Leisure World Security. And you couldn't even see the word. And I mean, like at nighttime, forget it. You're not even going to notice that. So the markings we have now are reflective. It does say Leisure World Special Police. When it's not a police officer driving the vehicle, that word has to be covered up. That's why you see the taxi sticker on them, because they're not allowed to drive a police vehicle if they're not a police officer. Radios. When I first got here, they told me the radios were being pieced together by other old radios that had fallen apart, and they couldn't even give me a radio. So we ordered new radios. Now everybody has a radio. We even have some spares. In doing that, I increased the capability of those radios. So we have a dedicated channel for security, a dedicated channel for transportation, and then there's 2 talk-around channels where we can just talk to each other directly if we need to. And there is a special events channel. So like when we're doing Juneteenth or the 4th of July parade, all the officers assigned to that detail are on special events so that we can talk to one another and coordinate the event without interrupting the calls for service. That was not here before. That sort of caught on with some other people, and then PPD said, can you get us some radios? And I got them radios. Then Lifestyle wanted radios. I got them radios. I didn't pay for those, so just so you know. They paid for them, but everybody has the same radios now, and we have the capability to speak with PPD. I didn't add the capability with Lifestyle because we don't really need that capability. The shuttle bus service, one of the things that I did to improve that, and I know there's going to be a lot of complaints in here about it, and trust me, I probably am more frustrated than any of you with the bus situation, but there is an end in sight, so I can tell you that. The current shuttle buses didn't have GPS, didn't have cameras or anything, so we installed GPS and cameras, and that GPS device also provides real-time tracking of the buses. So there is an app called Verizon Connect Reveal. I think on the phone it's called Verizon Spotlight. And if you download the app and you use the login information here, this information is also usually in the Leisure World News. You can log in and you can see where the bus is in real time. You can just click on it. It tells you what bus it is, who the driver is, and where it is in relation to your stop. I think that's been a huge improvement. We've also hired a business analyst who, because we received grant funding, and I'll talk about that more later in the presentation, but he's able to take that data from those GPSs and really track ridership and all sorts of things with that. So it's been extremely helpful. Another thing that I did, when I first got here, they were telling me that the police officers were the ones giving rides to people for the dollar ride. And I thought, what are we doing? I mean, to me, if you have a job, that should be your job. You shouldn't be doing that job and 3 other jobs. So I really got to the point where try to focus on each person having their assigned roles. So if you're a police officer here, you should be doing police things. Running calls for service, helping people that need help. You shouldn't really be giving people rides because, I just come from a different place where if you're in my car and there's an active shooter and it's February and it's 4 degrees outside, what do I do with you? Do I kick you out of the car or do I bring you to a deadly event? It's just not a good scenario. So they really shouldn't be giving the rides. So I took 3 of my staff and just made them dedicated dollar ride drivers so that's their only job. Now the SPOs, if they get super, overwhelmed, they can help with giving a ride, but it's not their primary responsibility. And so with dedicated dollar ride drivers, I think we've improved that service and we've improved our policing because we're not using those officers. There'd be like, hey, there's a medical emergency at the golf course and, well, I've got a rider right now. I got to drop them off and we might not even get to the call. So those police officers are trained in CPR. They carry AEDs. I would rather have them available to help because they're probably going to beat fire rescue to most things. Next slide. So these are some of the things I addressed right off the bat, which number 1 was safety. We had, when I first started, one of the buses was totaled at the intersection of North Leisure World Boulevard and Norbeck Boulevard. And even when I drove through that intersection myself, I came to a stop because I assumed you should stop there because it's such a big intersection, but there was no stop sign. So the reason that accident happened was the other driver also assumed there was a stop sign and he thought the bus would stop, so he made a left turn right in front of it. And his car was totaled and so was our bus. And so easy fix, you just put in stop signs. And so I put in stop signs there, I put them at Connecticut, and knock on wood, we haven't had an accident at those locations. I know not everybody stops at them and all that, and that's on you if you choose to ignore it, but I will say that I think it has greatly improved the safety at those intersections. Same thing at the main gate. There was no stop sign at the exit, and if you watch any video of anything at the gates, you will be astounded by some of the driving that goes on. I have seen people that are in the resident in the visitor lane that don't want to wait. They'll drive through the cut like they're going over to Giant, and they'll come down the wrong side of the road. That happens pretty regularly. So also, being that there was no stop sign, a lot of people would be exiting at a high rate of speed. They wouldn't see people coming through the cut the wrong way, and you'd have accidents. So I installed stop signs there, and that has also reduced the number of accidents that have occurred up there. Most of the accidents that we get at Main Gate now are just people hitting the gate arms. So a big improvement there. And some people will ask me, like, why didn't you close off the cut and all that? I'll talk about that later, but there's reasons. Also, we had 2 radar signs in the community, but they don't, they'll tell you how fast you're going, but they weren't really recording that data. So I bought 2 different ones that are a little better, and they do record the data. So these signs are a little more advanced, and they have different modes. So one of them is called stealth mode. So I can put the sign up in the location, and I can just put it into stealth mode so that it won't flash the speed. So you will think it's not working, but it is working. And it's recording your speed, and it's telling me how fast everyone's going. So don't play around. Just because you think it might not be working, it's working. So I usually, like, if I move it to a location, I might keep it in stealth mode for a week just to get some true speeds, and then I turn it on to where it's telling you. I did take some data from that. I do take the data every week, and I report it to Regina Andrews. And so just to give you an idea, I took 6 months of data. I used to have other data in here, but this is fresh. This is from this week. So I did 6 months of data from, I think it was January to June, and we had 149,090 vehicles pass those signs. And of that number of vehicles, 734 were speeding, which I'm counting speeding as 41 or more over. One sec. And so when you crunch those numbers, that's about half of 1% of the cars that are speeding in here. So I hear a lot, like there's a lot of people speeding, and the data doesn't support that. However, I did put one of the signs at South Leisure World Boulevard and Adderley Court, and I'm never going to take it down from there because every week, I'll just give you an average, like 4,000 cars pass the sign. And every week there's in the 20s that are doing over 41. There's usually about 10 that are doing over 46, 5 that are doing over 50, and once in a while somebody over 56. Could that be an emergency vehicle? It could be, but I don't think that much. So it's a downhill and a straightaway, and they're flying through there. So I am trying to make the argument with the board. So that one at Adderley is doing such a good job that I've started to, when I write my weekly report to my supervisor, I put in there the amount of revenue we would have earned off that if it was a speed camera, and it's if you play it out to a whole year, we earn about $60,000 off of that camera if there was a camera there. So that's going to have to go through the board of directors and all that, but it's something I'm working on. Another thing that we did to improve pedestrian safety was we added at every intersection that we could where there's a crosswalk and there was the ability to add like a holder for them, we added the orange flags. So Matt Proday, he's awesome. He's works at PPD, but he's the trust properties guy, and really anything I ask him to do, he will do for me. If I need a sign or the flags or moving the speed boards, he does all that for me and never complains, and he does it very quickly. So we have a really good relationship, and he's helped us improve pedestrian safety. Another thing that I did was I added surveillance cameras. So again, when I started, I think they had like a couple cameras at each gate, maybe a total of 6 cameras. And nobody had the login to watch them, or maybe they did, but they weren't telling me, who knows. But I hired a company to put in cameras, and to date we have 79 cameras on trust properties. These have paid for themselves. I will tell you, there have been multiple times when people have complained about my staff, and then I might just tell the person, hey, just so you know, everything is recorded both audibly and visually. I'll go back and look at it, and the person will typically say, never mind, I don't want to talk about it. So, but I still watch it and find that my staff did a good job. Has there been times that we did make mistakes? Yes. And I've had to either discipline somebody or, but it also can be used as a tool in terms of training and helping us get better. So if we mess something up, fine, that's great. I'm glad you brought it to my attention. I'd like to address it with my people. And they know they're being recorded, and so I found it to be very helpful. In addition to that, in terms of liability, there's people that will make claims that something happened and it didn't happen, and that saves you guys a lot of money, because if they sue, it's like $50,000 every time somebody sues. That's the deductible. So you don't, if you can prevent that with a video, which we've done several times, that's really helpful. Mr. Kimball, I'm a big fan of body-worn cameras. When Montgomery County first came out with them, I was one of the first to volunteer to wear one because I was involved in a shooting. And so I was actually awarded the Chiefs Award for being one of the first volunteers to wear the device. I find them to be extremely effective and helpful. In fact, in the homicide investigation, that body-worn camera will provide critical evidence as to what happened inside that apartment. So Mr. Kimball said to go ahead and get them. We did that, and so now every special police officer that works here is wearing a body-worn camera. And again, it's not to get anybody in trouble. We use it a lot for training. There was I don't know if you guys remember, back in October, I think, of 23, we had a guy running around with a handgun. The officer did a great job in confronting him and getting him into custody before Montgomery County got here. But there were some training things that I thought, let's just go over it. I don't ever critique someone to make fun of them, but I critique them to say, hey, maybe we could do this next time instead. It's safer, or, there's a better way. I think they're just great for training, and I'm big about training. So we also added an emergency cell phone at the main gate. When that plane hit the power wires over by the air park and we lost all the power, I was pretty new at the time, and I quickly realized that if we didn't have power, we don't have phones at the gates, which was a big problem. And so we added a cell phone up there, so if we do have outages, and we've experienced a few lately, we at least have that backup phone so we're not sitting in the dark. And then we also changed the uniforms. I designed it. I think you would like it. I don't know. Modeling it. But I'm not a designer. Yeah, I'm not a designer, but I thought it just looked better than what we had on before. So next slide. So in the next few slides, I'm going to show you some of the things that we did, just screenshots of these things so you can get a better visual idea of what I've done. One of the things that we improved was report writing. In the beginning, they were doing reports on a fillable PDF form. So when I looked at the reports, it basically had the person's name, maybe another person's name, and a sentence for a narrative, which didn't say a whole lot. And if someone had come to me and said, hey, I was in an accident 2 years ago. Can you give me a copy of the report? Give me 2 years. It's going to take that long to find it. They weren't searchable. They're probably in a box at the basement of Clubhouse 2. It was impossible. So one of the things I picked up from Georgetown University was a report writing software that I found to be very user-friendly and easy to use. The one that we were using in Montgomery County was very complicated. I couldn't even write a report on it because I had become a sergeant and I didn't write that many reports anymore. But I knew how to check them, but I couldn't write one. So if I arrested somebody, I'd have to go to one of my guys and say, can you help me write the report? And they go, I'll just do it, Sarge. And I'm like, no, I want to do it. I just don't know how to do it. It's so hard. This system's so much easier, and it captures a lot of data. And so when they put your information in, if you've ever called before and reported something, when they hit like the tab after your name, it'll ask them, is this the person that you want, if you've already been put in before. So it already has your name, date of birth, address, phone number. So it saves them time. They don't have to re-input the same information over and over again. It's also searchable. If you want to say, hey, have you ever heard of this guy? I can look in there and see. One example, before we moved to the new building, there was an elderly Asian male that came to my office. He really didn't speak any English. Someone brought him to me and said he's lost. And I just said, what's your name? He was able to give me his last name. I typed it into the report writing software. Boom, there was his driver's license. Someone had stopped him before, taken a picture of it. I had his address. I just called for one of the SPOs to come give him a ride home, and his wife wasn't even aware that he had gotten out. So it's just really helpful. If we hadn't had that software, he'd probably still be sitting in my office and trying to figure out where he lived. It also provides like a monthly pie chart that I use for the S&T committee meetings. It really breaks down like the percentages of the events. What are we responding to the most? And one of the things I like to use that for is for when fire rescue breaches your door. So I've been tracking that data to show how many times, and I think the average was about 3 times a month that happens here, because we didn't have your key on file or the key doesn't work or whatever. I talked about the Leisure World Bus Riders app. I have a screenshot of that just so you can see what that looks like. And then I have a picture of like the before and after of the Leisure World police vehicles. I'm sure you've seen them, but I think it's also good just to see them side by side so you can get a comparison. So this is what our current police reports look like. You can see it's a lot more thorough. It identifies the reporter as Jerome Cummings. The type of event was a property damage collision. That just means a car accident. And it has like the dates and times, the locations, and then a narrative which spells out. This software also allows them to upload digital media. So if they were to take pictures at the car accident, they can attach those to the report. That helps Randy McPhillips in risk management because he can access the photos. They can even attach a video. Recently there was a harassment by a neighbor to another neighbor here, and it was all on the complainant's Ring camera. And she was able to give us the camera, and we were able to attach it to the report, so we have all the video. Just a way better system, and you wouldn't have been able to do that with the old PDF forms we were using. So this is the pie chart, actually. It wasn't the other one. This shows you, you see the big blue block? That is welfare checks, and not us handing out money. It's us going by to make sure someone's okay. That's a lot of what we do. In this pie chart, that was 20 events for almost 34% of the calls we reported that month. It's good because the committee can see the breakdown of the events. I can do it for any time span, a month, a year, whatever. But it also is helpful with things like problems at the Norbeck Gate. there's a board member who likes to have data to provide to like the county council or the governor, and we're able to pull more data from this than the county actually has reported on their own website about incidents around that gate, because they don't report anything that happens in our community. So we're getting more data than them because we can get both. We can get theirs and ours. So this is the bus app that I was telling you about. Yeah, there it is. And I'm going to step away from the mic for 1 sec, but you can see the green dots on here. These are buses, and there's like arrows in which direction they're going. And then on the left side of the screen, it tells you who the driver is, how fast the bus is going, where it is in relation to you in the community, so you can kind of estimate when it's going to arrive to you. So that's what we're using. I think it's pretty good. For the people that are using it, I get good feedback. And we'll try to continue to use that with the arrival of new buses. The next slide. So that's the old car, and you can hardly even see the word security. And then the new car, and it's a lot more visible. And after I made that change, people were like, "We see you guys all the time." And I'm like, well, I think they were there. I just don't know that you noticed the car. It was just so bland. But yeah, so I think that was a better change. We've also put in emergency lights in the vehicles, and that helps them get around a little bit easier if they're going, to an emergency. Another short-term goal, I wrote a memo to Mr. Kimball at the time to say we need to restructure the department. And the reason for that was the way it was structured when I first got here was it was director of security, and I had 3 people under me, which was the supervisor of security, the supervisor of transportation, and an administrative coordinator, which is fine. That's okay in terms of a leadership perspective. But what's not good is the lieutenant, is what I call him now. I changed it from supervisory special police officer to lieutenant. He was in charge of the entire security force, which was 30-some people. You cannot supervise 30 people. It's impossible. I mean, you can do it, but you're not going to do it well. And so, if it comes time to write someone's review, you may not have even seen that person this year. So how would you even give them a fair review? So I changed to a tiered leadership system where the lieutenant is in charge of sergeants. There's 3 of those, 1 on each shift. The sergeant is in charge of his shift. So the sergeant of the day shift is in charge of 2 special police officers and then 8 or 9 gate guards. But 8 or 9 gate guards aren't working at the same time. So it's only like in a given day, he might be in charge of 1 other officer and maybe 5 gate guards. So that's much more manageable from a leadership perspective. He can oversee what 6 people are doing, no problem. And when it comes time to write the reviews, he writes their reviews, not the lieutenant. Someone who's actually been in touch with them throughout the year and knows what they're good at, what they need help with, and that kind of stuff. I also was told about the overtime issue here with security and how could I change it. So one of the things I did with the special police officers, it couldn't be done with the gate guards, but with the special police officers, I changed them from 5 days a week, 8-hour days to 4 days a week, 10-hour days. The reason I did that is because without having to take a day off, you get 56 extra days off a year. And it creates overlaps on the shifts. So you might have one officer working the day shift, but then the evening officer comes in and overlaps him before he gets off. So if he's got reports to write, he can go back and write the reports while another officer can start running the calls. It just reduces the need for overtime. I also rotate them so that the sergeant gets a nice cushy schedule, so you really want to make a sergeant, but they work like weekdays. The officers rotate through the weekends. So if you're an officer, you work 2 months of weekends and then you get 2 months of weekends off. So you work weekdays. And so they just rotate that back and forth. So half the year they get the weekend off and half the year they work it, which is better than, well, you always work the weekend. That's your schedule. Tough luck. that lowers morale. So I think this boosts morale. I'm also trying to get 2 more special police officers because, ironically, I met with our CFO about 2 weeks before the homicide occurred, and I asked him for 2 more SPOs because we only have 1 SPO working on the weekends, and that's not safe. And, there's not a lot of stuff they should be doing by themselves. And this was a great example. The officer went into that call by himself. He made the arrest by himself. 911 told him to do CPR. He's like, I can't really do that right now. I got a guy here and, I'm by myself. But he tried. He did it by himself. I critiqued it with him after, and I said I would have refused. I'm sorry for her. However, I don't want to get killed. So I haven't searched the apartment. I'm not going to do anything until the scene is secure. So we need more people, and we're working on that. Another thing we did was, again, everything was on pen and paper. So the schedules for the gate guards, they would do it on like an Excel spreadsheet. They'd print that out and they'd pin it up at the gates. So what was happening is I hate Teresa, and so I see that I have to work with her today at the gate, so I'm going to scratch her name off and move my buddy over here, and she's going to go work by herself at Connecticut. That's not how it works. So, you get what you get. You get what you're assigned. And I do try to work with people. If they really don't want to be at the main gate, we can accommodate them and just give them the side gate or whatever. But that's also not exactly fair to everybody else. But it's a balance. There's people who just like the main gate. And so anyway, we when I first got this software, it's called Sling Time Management. And it was free. I think they since caught on and said we should be charging for it because it's really good. And they don't charge a lot, so that's good. But I paid for it because it's so effective in managing how we assign our people around the community. And I'm going to show you a screenshot of that too to give you a better idea. That's it. So so this is just like what 4 days looks like. And I couldn't even get it all on the screen because there's so many people working throughout the day. But the light blue are the gate guards. The dark blue are the police officers. Green, like the darker green is a dollar ride driver, and then the green is bus drivers, and so on. And so it also made it a lot better because, let's say tonight there's one police officer working the midnight shift, but he calls in sick. Rather than me calling 50 people to see, can you work tonight? All you do is you go in, you delete their name off that, and you make the shift available. They all get a ping on their phone that there's an available shift, and they all sign up and try to get it. And then you just pick who you want to work it. So no phone calls, and there's your, I don't want to use the word because it's a bad word, but there's your regular people that like the overtime. And so it's never been an issue filling an available shift for overtime, although we try to really limit the overtime. But this system makes it a lot easier to get people and work it out that way. So it's been very helpful. Just to show you what the department looks like from an organizational perspective. Like I said before, it was just the lieutenant was in charge of like all these people. And you just cannot supervise that many people. It's impossible. So what I did is I actually hired another administrative coordinator. She's part-time. But so I oversee 2 administrative coordinators, the transportation supervisor, and the lieutenant. And then we hired the business analyst as his title, but he's really in charge of grants management and statistical gathering for reporting for the grants. He is a wizard. He does stuff with computers. I don't even know what he's doing. But if I say, I need you to do this, he can make it happen. As an example, one of the things, because he told me right away, he's like, I can automate anything. And I'm like, I don't really even know what you're saying. But like when we did the resident ID cards, so Dwelling Live, the software we use to check people in at the gates, you can download everybody into an Excel spreadsheet. So I could see by mutual, and I broke them down by mutual. So like that's how we were going to do, each group. And I could see how many people could potentially come on those days. I said, is there a way that like when the person came and got their ID, I would change them in the Excel spreadsheet to green, meaning they got it. I said, is there a way that you can make it so when I change it to green, it'll count that one and move it to a different folder, like a completed folder? He's like, yeah, give me like an hour. He did it. So all I had to do was click a button and it would tell me real time how many we'd issued that day or total. And then it took the ones that were green and moved it to a completed folder. So we weren't going back and repeating or doing any of that. He's really good at that stuff. Same thing with that GPS app. He's pulling data down from that in real time. He's got everything set up so he doesn't even have to physically do anything now. It just does it by itself. So I feel like, he's kind of ripping me off, but and I'm paying for him, but the computer's doing the work. So, but no, he's a good guy, and we're really lucky to have him. So I did mention Dwelling Live. Probably a lot of people don't. Every time I have spoken about it, a lot of people don't know what it is. But it is a software that Leisure World had purchased before I was hired here. And they had it. They spent a lot of money on it, and nobody ever turned it on. And so by the time I came, there wasn't really anybody that knew much about it. So I'm pretty good with computers. I'm not like my business analyst, but I can get around. And I just started playing around with Dwelling Live to see what does it do, how can we use it. And I could see that it was going to greatly improve the security at the gates because they were using it to issue the RFIDs. So you put your car in there and it reads the sticker and it'll open the gate for you. But people were still coming in with old guest passes, and they would do, if they had the old pass, they'd go like this because that's putting their fingers over the expiration, and everyone's onto that trick. And so I was like, I did start an incentive program. I said, whoever brings me the most passes each month gets a free day off. I got a lot of passes. I don't know if they've been holding on to them for a while, but they had a lot. And so we got rid of that, and now it issues a pass that has to be scanned. When they scan that pass, the computer tells them, is that a valid entry? Yes or no. If it is, it automatically opens the gate so they don't have to flip the switch. If it's not, it tells them that's somebody they should be looking into, because I have the ability to go in there and restrict people's access. So if you had a fallout with your son and you don't want him to come here anymore, you just call us and let us know, and we can put him on restricted. So the guard will see that that person's not allowed to come in. They won't even call you. They'll just say you're not allowed to come in. It also has a feature called the watch list. And I believe, I didn't look at the number before I came, but it's over 50 people that are on that list that are banned from the community. And it used to be, they had a clipboard hanging in the gate, and it was like that thick of papers of people's pictures and why they were banned. And I was like, there's no way you're looking at the deepest ones in there. And some of them were from like 10 years ago. I'm like, is that person even still banned, or do they even live here? And so I took all those down. I called a lot of the people that were still possibly relevant to say, did you still want your son banned? Oh, no, he's fine. Okay. So we cleaned that up. And but the people on there now are banned. And the gate guards are told to check it every day to see that, familiarize yourself with the faces and the names and the reasons. But if they're on the watch list as banned, they're also restricted on a guest list somewhere. It might just be in security if it's like a former employee or something like that. So it's made the whole thing a lot better in terms of getting through the gates. I think it's quicker. I mean, I said, like, when we first turn it on, I know some people, you're going to hear a lot of bad words. But they'll get used to it. And it's the kind of security you should expect living in a gated community. You know, before, in fact, when I came for my interview here, one of the questions she asked me was, "What was your experience like coming through the gate?" I said, "You really want to know?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, he put the arm up and he waved, and he didn't even talk to me. She's like, "How would you fix that?" I said, "Well, I believe in training, but I also believe in security, and you get one. I'll train you. If you do it again, you're not going to work here." So that's where we are, and I think it's made things a lot better. Same thing with the pedestrian gate coming over from Giant. It used to be that you push a button and they'd talk to you and they couldn't see who was there. Now I added, it's called an AI phone, so it has a camera on it. They can see you. One of the things I'm trying to do, and the CFO is totally with me on this, it's just a matter of budgeting, but I'm going to be putting one of the card readers there, so that that's one of my top priorities, so that for several reasons. Make your life easier getting through the gate so you don't have to be stopped every time, but also make the guard's life easier because he doesn't have to check every single person coming through the gate. If you have a resident ID, you can let yourself in. If you don't and you have to push the button, then he should be doing a little bit of a background on that. So that's where we're at with that. We've done all those things. Another thing, when I first got here, when fire rescue would come into the community, they would pass through the gate guard would get on the radio and they would say, "I have an ambulance that just came in with lights on." So it was the police officer's job then to try to find them. They might be all the way on the other side of the community. So they'd be driving around looking for an ambulance. They 50-50 whether they'd find it. So I told you I started my career in the Emergency Communications Center. Fire rescue was in there as well. And I made good friends with a guy. His name's Gary Cooper. He is now the number 2 guy in the fire department. And we're friends. And so I called him and I said, "Is there some way that we can get the information of where you guys are going?" And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." And he hooks me up with their IT guy. And so now when fire rescue gets a call to come in Leisure World, every special police officer here and the main gate gets a text on the phone that says what the call is and where they're going. And so we're able to pull the key, and most times we're there before they are because we're so close. And so again, if it's like a CPR kind of thing, they're gonna beat fire rescue and help you before, and seconds matter. And so so that's one improvement, and it's been major, and it's really helpful. And so can't thank them enough, and they've been so helpful in cooperating with us. Another thing were the defibrillators. There's, I think, 11 of them on the trust properties or with security. And so I went around and I found that 2 of them actually worked, which was good. The rest of them, dead batteries or whatever, they just needed to be refurbished. So we've done that, and now we have a regular program of checking them, and they all work, and SPOs carry them in the car, and they're at every trust property, and I'm sure they're in a lot of the buildings too, your high rises and stuff, but I don't maintain those, just the ones in the trust. So now we're at midterm. This is kind of where we are now. I'm still working on monthly training for SPOs. I haven't gotten to that yet. We've done a lot of training, but I can't get it to where it's been regular because this and that comes up and I just haven't been able to do it. But some stuff that we did do was the ticket writing. They are able to write Montgomery County parking tickets. However, and to some people's dismay, I don't really want them to do that too much because if you really want to get people mad and get complaints, go write the parking ticket. But I get a lot of complaints when they do it. And so I sort of modified the way that we do it. And I said, if it's a fire lane or a handicap, I don't care if you write the ticket. However, I would still prefer if you try to find the owner. and tell them to move. If they don't move after that, then write it. But we try to go the extra mile. When I was a police officer, I'm not going to try to find you. I was just going to put a ticket on your car. I don't care. But I really, this is our community, and I'm not trying to hammer people, and so I really try to let them find you first and get you to move your car. We also did some outside training with Montgomery County Police, and we're exploring more options to do that. There was some grant funding available, and we met with Chief Yamada and Assistant Chief Augustine. I'm actually good friends with Yamada. We've been friends for 30 years. And we were going to have this partnership put together, but then that grant got defunded. So that kind of fell through. But that hasn't stopped us from continuing to look for opportunities to sort of collaborate with them. One of the things that we do a lot for them. Montgomery County will often call the main gate and say, hey, there's a welfare check. Can you guys handle it? And we're happy to do that. On the flip side, if we have to arrest somebody, we need them to come take them. So they do that. We're happy to help them because we know they're shorthanded, and we have police officers here that can handle a lot of their calls, and we do that, but we also ask for their help on the other side. We do have in-house training. We made a PowerPoint for the gate guards and a PowerPoint for the SPOs. So when they're newly hired, they have to review that information. And as one of my gate guards is so good that I give her extra money to be a trainer. And she created some tests for both the police officers and the gate guards. So they have to take this test. It's like just a knowledge test, but it kind of helps keep them up to speed on what's going on. Transit training. That's something we're going to be working on with the grant to provide training on how to ride the buses, especially with the new buses we're getting. They're wheelchair accessible, and so there's going to be a little bit of difference. They won't have ramps on them anymore. So there's going to be some education in how to get on and off those buses. Next slide. So I talked about this a little bit, pedestrian safety. There's 29 crosswalks in the community, and we did add to as many of those as we could. We added those orange flags. I did have a traffic engineering firm come out and do a study on them, and I wrote a 10-year plan, which went up above my head to the powers that be to start working on bringing those up to speed, those pedestrian crosswalks. So that's in the works. The cutover at the main gate, that came up in one of the S&T meetings that you should close it. It's just too dangerous. And I sent that same firm to go look at that location, and they said, you really can't close that. There's 300 cars per hour that come out of the shopping center. And it would just cause more backups if you sent them up to the light, and then it would be backing up into the community. So that wasn't really a viable solution. The one solution they recommended that we could do was the stop signs, and so I put those in. There were some the reason it's complicated there is there's 4 different entities that come together at that location. You have Leisure World Property, you have the property of the shopping center, you have Montgomery County Roads, and then Maryland State Roads. To get them all to agree on what to do there is never going to happen. Like, they don't care what our problems are. So, there was to put in like a concrete island to direct traffic in a certain way, but that's not on our property, and I don't think anybody's going to cooperate with us to do that. Norbeck Gate, I did write a proposal when I first got here to say, because I couldn't believe it's 1 lane and it's crazy. To give you some perspective, a lot of people say, why don't you just make it resident only? That's not possible. I don't know if you'll believe me or not, but I do have the data to support it, that Norbeck Gate sees anywhere between 5,500 to 7,000 entries per day. And a lot of those are residents. So changing that isn't going to do anything. It needs a second lane like Connecticut. Norbeck Gate gets more entries than Main Gate most days. So that's just how it is. So they did do a study there, and they did say that just adding the lane would probably alleviate the whole problem. So that's what we're trying to do. We're almost at the finishing stages of the RFP to go out. It's still going to take a long time for it to happen because once we hire a firm to do it, the permitting takes a year from Montgomery County. So whenever that gets done, it'll actually happen, and it should happen pretty quickly. It's not a huge project, but the permitting is going to be the holdup. And just so again, Dwelling Live does this. It gives me a report every day of the number of cars that come through the gates, and then it also gives me like a weekly report, which I put in my report to my superior. And then I did some digging. This is some old data, but it's all still the same. In 2024, in the second quarter, we averaged 101,170 cars through the gates per week. That's 5.2 million a year. So, when people say, why doesn't the guard do this? They're really overwhelmed. I mean, they're getting a lot of traffic. They handle all the calls up there. They handle PPD calls up there. It's just very busy up there. And so, as you can see, that number is pretty astounding. This is something, all these things we're pretty much doing right now. These are like my 2025 goals. So, key box audit. There's 5,600 and some units in Leisure World. And we have a lot of keys for most of that. There at Georgetown, they had this key box management system, and I really liked it, but it's expensive, and so we're not going to go with it. But I reached out to one of the vendors to ask him, and he's like, well, how many keys do you need to house? And I was like, it's like over 5,000. He's like, the only person who's asked for more than that was Congress. That's what we have. I don't know. It's a lot. And so it would just be a lot to get that many boxes. But we found a cheaper solution, and we're in the process of renovating the gatehouses because the conditions in there are pretty deplorable, and you wouldn't want to work there if you were me. But we've gotten some quotes on fixing them. We're going to fix them. We're going to move the key boxes into a different room and make them, and my staff that knows how to do the keys is really going to go through and make it much more easy to see and manageable. So, because as it is now, sometimes they're like, hey, they said they didn't have my key, and I'll send Lieutenant Brown up there and he'll find it, but it was on the floor, or it's at the bottom of the box, it fell off the ring, and it's just not a good system. Another thing I'm trying to do this year, hopefully, and I'm asking the business analyst to help me find money for this, is I want to put bus stop signs around the community. And if we can find the money, I'd like to add shelters over those stops. Like, everybody knows the bus stops at the high rises, that's a gimme. But if you're out at like Hyde Park, where does it stop? And there's people that sort of trail along the route, and the bus will pick them up along the way. I don't want that anymore. Like, we get a lot of complaints about reliability and service, and really, if you can get all the riders in one spot, it would improve reliability and service. So that's something we're trying to do. And I already talked about the Norbeck Gate construction. But just to sum that up, it's going to be a smaller gatehouse, much like Connecticut. There'll be 2 lanes. They're going to add a turnaround in front of the house so that if you pull in there after hours, you'll be able to make a U-turn rather than a 75-point turn to get back out. And so that's all in the works, and they're going to repave. The resident ID card system, we got that done at the end of 24 and early 25. We issued around 4,000 cards. We did it every Saturday for 4 months. It was, I think, very successful. If you haven't gotten one, you can get it at the front desk of the admin building now. We did replace those 2 old cars and got 2 newer ones. However, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, one of the SPOs on Midnights totaled a car. Didn't tell me, didn't turn on his camera. He doesn't work here anymore. Not by his choice, but we're not doing that. And so we're going to have to replace that car. Another thing that I wanted to eliminate was the fee for the mobility van. If you need the mobility van because you have mobility issues, you shouldn't have to pay to ride it. So, thank you. So that we got rid of that. I will say there are some people that now try to get that ride for free. They don't need it for free, so gotta watch them like a hawk. But I will tell you, I don't have an exact date for the buses, but we did receive 2 transportation grants, and so originally the first one we got was from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. And that grant, they told us the buses would be here this June. However, there was some slight hiccup with the funding, the way the budget was laid out. And originally we were like over budget, so that held back the paperwork that we needed to get the buses here. Another company, I don't know who it was, pulled out of their grant, and so the COG gave us some extra funding, which was nice. So we're expecting those buses, I would say, anytime. I don't want to give a date because then someone will be like, you said, and I know. But I'm thinking August. I'm hoping August. But they're going to be 3 gas-powered buses with wheelchair capability. And so just to show you, these were the grants we received from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. The award was $418,000. That pays for 3 buses. It also paid for my business analyst's salary and some capital expenses and things like operating expenses. And they gave us more than that. So this number is old, but I don't have the actual number now. But we're going to get 3 wheelchair accessible buses from that. And then Senator Kramer awarded us a Maryland State Legislative Bond Initiative grant for $250,000 for an electric bus. And I thought, that's great. Where are we going to plug that in? So that's been the holdup for that. I can't believe how hard it is to get. First of all, Pepco is impossible, but then just trying to get the information you need on where you can put a level 3 charger, because that's what you need. A level 2 will charge a bus like that in about 16 hours. That's too long. The level 3 is 4 to 6 hours, which is more what we need. Although the bus has, and I'm going to mess this word up, regenerative, got it, braking. So that would help in this community because there's a lot of braking. So the braking does help keep the battery charged or from draining as much. So we're still working on getting that. I talked with Senator Kramer and said, it's not that we don't want the money. We're just having trouble finding out where to put this charger. So I think we're getting close to having an answer for that, where it's going to go. I think it's probably going to go over at PPD because there's a transformer there that we can draw from to put it in. But that's what we're working on, and that's why it's such a holdup. So just so y'all know, you don't think I'm just like ignoring it. We're trying. But the bus itself costs $225,000. We do have a vendor that can give us that bus. And there are grants available to pay for the charger that are non-competitive. So my analyst has found that money, and he's going to try to go for that when we get to the point where we need it. The last one is ridership. I used to get a lot of, why do we have the buses? No one rides them. And so just give you some statistical data to show you what's going on. In 2019, pre-pandemic, the amount of unlinked passenger trips was 50,100. And then I skipped a couple years just to get to post-pandemic. In 2022, we saw 30,316 riders. So yeah, we lost a lot of ridership. However, we've seen a 20% increase after that. So 2023, we had 45,879, and last year, 49,790. So we're almost back to the pre-pandemic number. So we're getting there. Long-term goals, training. I said I'm big about training. I'm serious about it. I want training for our bus operators. I want like an organized program for them. I'd like to do an annual training program for them, much like we did on the police department. We called it in-service training. We went every year for updates and keep you up to date on law and tactics and all sorts of different things. Same thing with my gate guards and my special police officers. I'm trying to look at courses that are offered through the Maryland Police Training Commission, but also Maryland State Police has changed the licensing for our staff. I think that something happened up there that they needed to be more accountable. So prior to this year, if you were a gate guard, you didn't have to have any kind of license. You just, you started and you worked at the gate. Now you have to have a guard card, so we send them to 12 hours of training, and then they get issued this license to be a security officer. And then same thing with the SPOs. They go through training, and they also get a license. Just so you know, what is a special police officer? They're a police officer on the property of the commission. So on Leisure World property, they can make arrests. They can do anything a police officer can do. They just can't leave the property and do those things. So MSP also changed one of the requirements for reporting. So now anytime a security officer or a police officer uses force, it has to be reported through their licensing portal. And this year we've done that 5 times. Don't freak out, we're not beating people. It's just like if you handcuff someone, you have to call that force. And we've done that several times. So I'm the reporter for that. I go on there and I just do the report. And they don't question it. I think they're just collecting the data. So this is the last slide. So long-term goals, more cameras. I've just found them to be so valuable. I'd like to add more through the community. I just got a quote from my vendor for the exterior of Clubhouse 2 because we've had a lot of problems over there in the parking lot. Don't freak out, but there was one guy that exposed himself to a resident, and it would have been great to have it on video, just not because I want to watch it, but for court. So, and then there's other. Sorry.
Didn't someone drive into Clubhouse?
We've had 2 cars drive into the building. We've had other people report that their car got hit and run in the lot and didn't look like it really did, but maybe it did. I don't know. But cameras really resolve a lot of the issues, and so. Not that I want to look at some other guy, but it would have helped. Same thing with what is an LPR? That stands for license plate reader. And so I want to add those at the gates, both inbound and outbound. And, I don't know that I'm getting a lot of support above me about it. They're not anti the idea, but I'm trying to explain how helpful it could be. Dwelling Live has the capability to record your visitor's tag, associate the vehicle with the tag, and then ultimately, and even your vehicle. And so you wouldn't need RFIDs anymore. It could open the gate just by reading your tag through that camera. And so that would be helpful because the RFID is, we spend a lot of money on purchasing those to put them on the cars, and you'd be able to get rid of that. Also with the license plate readers, they can be helpful like you might think that's like Big Brother, you're going to have all our data. But if we were going to write speed camera tickets, we would need that data. Because if your visitor is speeding through the community, how am I going to give them a ticket if I don't know who it is? And so it's really important to get that. But also, if there's a missing person and they have a vehicle, I can go back on that license plate reader data and see when's the last time they came in. Did they leave? If they haven't left, there's a good chance they're still in the community, and so it helps narrow down the search. So I'm just making a push for the LPRs and the speed cameras. I think the speed cameras will really enhance the safety. The perimeter fence comes up all the time. I can tell you that, again, just like the bus, I've had no crime attributed to somebody jumping the fence and coming in and doing anything. However, the fence does need repair, and I've been working with PPD to have them go out and fix it. I don't fix the fence. That's not my thing. But we are. I know it's a security feature, so we are trying to address it. And then transportation, the thing that I'm really trying to do is when we get these additional buses, I'm trying to lease back one of the buses that we have now, even though they're not great. They have a lot of mechanical issues, but I just want to have like a spare, because when one bus goes down, we're down, and we have no backup, and so it really hurts our efficiency and effectiveness. And then I told the business analyst, so the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments that granted us the 3 wheelchair buses has opened that grant again. And I said to the business analyst, write another grant and get minivans. And so the guy that helps us with our buses now loaned us a minivan for free for about 4 days, and we tested it as a bus. And it wasn't full, and so they would work. And there's several reasons. Minivans are more serviceable. The parts don't take as long to get. You can have it fixed at Graves if you need. They'll have it back in a day. It's just a better option. And if we were to get more minivans, then I would supplement the lines with the minivans. I'd also ask in the grant to have more drivers. So instead of it taking 40 minutes to get around the community, we could have 2 or 3 shuttles on each line to where it was either 20 minutes or 13 minutes, depending on how many shuttles we could provide. I've also been asked about like night service. We're going to do a survey to see if there's enough demand to do such a thing. And the last one is a larger fleet of police vehicles. Right now, we only have 5 cars. And one just got totaled, so we have 4. And we share those cars with the dollar ride drivers, and so there's just not enough vehicles. In fact, I drive my own car to everything. If there's any kind of event in here, I have to take my car, and so that's not great. I even asked, could we just get like those little gators? They go like 30 miles an hour and they're cheaper than a car, but we're working on it. So those are my long-term goals.